Welcome back to Danny Rants. Today we have a very special guest. Every week we have a very special guest sitting across from me. We have a festival owner, a nightclub owner, a promoter, and a restaurateur extraordinaire, Mr. Kiet from TANG Group. How are you, my man?
Yeah, really good.
Thank you so much for coming down on short notice.
Yeah, thanks. I just got the call from you last night, literally Korean barbecue.
That's sort of my bit of my trait, to be honest. Small timelines and late call-ups is the Danny Rant way.
Yeah, oh good.
So you are obviously you've been working in the nightclub space and the entertainment space for almost 30 years.
30 years this year.
There you go. So exactly 30 years.
Yeah.
Before you're a promoter, where do you live? Where do you come from? And what's the journey of how do you get to becoming a guy who works in one of the biggest Asian night groups and entertainment groups in Australia?
Yep. So funny story. It all started off with Street Fighter. So as a young kid in high school, I used to always play Street Fighter at my local milk bar. This is back in Keysborough. And through there, I met the son of the milk bar owner, who we became friends later on, took a liking to me. He was a bit older than me. And his name's Roger Abood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So then he said, look, when you turn 18, because you look like a little bit of personality, because I was always the larrikin in the milk bar, he goes, you should come work at my nightclubs. And at that time, he was running, I believe, Brown Sugar at Silver's. So on my 18th birthday, I turned up with the first guest list I ever handed in, invited my friends, and that's how the journey started for me coming into nightclub land.
Yeah, wow. And so like you talked about, obviously you're from Keysborough.
Yeah.
Like where you're Vietnamese, I believe?
Yes, Vietnamese, Chinese.
Vietnamese, Chinese. So how do you and your family get to Keysborough?
Refugee. So when I came over I must have been about 3.5 years old with my dad as a refugee, fleeing Vietnam and the war and stuff. What happened was we ended up getting lost and stranded in the seas. We were actually robbed by pirates. So when we were robbed by pirates, the bad thing was not only did they take the jewelry, because as refugees you can't take Australian currency. This was back, in the late 70s, early 80s. They took all the gold that they had, hoping to sell that in the new land to get money. And through that, they robbed us of the jewelry, but also took the water, and they took all the diesel petrol as well. Pretty much left us stranded. Luckily, the Malaysian Coast Guard picked us up, said, what are you guys doing? Then took us into the refugee camp where we got processed and got sponsored by my dad's brother, Uncle Min. And that's how we came to Australia. And we first got moved into the hostel in Westall, which is very close to Springvale. Yeah.
That's a fucking wild story.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that one.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
wait, like obviously you have no memory of it, you'd be too young, but like did that happen a lot and do people die out there?
People can die because you're left stranded. So I'm probably one of the lucky ones where I can tell the story that we survived. But if you're stranded out in the sea with no water, no petrol, no food, I mean, it's only a matter of days before you could pass out.
Dude, that is the world's rough, hey. Like that is a proper dog's act.
Yeah, yeah.
So then you put this guest list in at Silver's and your journey begins, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously you've been doing this for a long fucking time, very successfully. How do you then go into running your own nights, and where does it all kind of start and begin?
Yeah, sure. So working with Roger at his nights, we started off just at Brown Sugar. I quickly collected momentum, inviting friends. That branched out to be beyond just inviting the Asians. I had, a few Indian friends, Sri Lankan friends, and world friends as well, and invited them down. Before long, he then got me to start running Mothership with him on Sunday. So this is now, I'm probably 20 years old, 21 years old, 2-3 years later. And what happened was, it was such a challenging thing because he would go interstate to sort of grow his brand, Mothership and Midnight. Yeah, that's what he had back in the days. And he would leave me, the 21-year-old, to now go and tell 30-year-old DJs what to do. And it was such a daunting task for me, but I was basically thrown in the deep end and go figure it out. And we moved into the Paran office. He set up an office where Alistair Kennedy.
Yeah.
So he was my GM. So the GM of, before he was the GM of Future Entertainment, he was doing things for Roger Abood.
I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah. So he was my boss at the time, my direct report, because Roger was always in and out of the state. Yeah. Through there, I spent the next, maybe another 2 years or so with my business partner at the time, Trent. And we worked our asses off trying to sort of build Roger's brand to the point where I remember there would be artwork deadlines. We would literally stay and sleep over at the office. and we'd set the alarm at 8 a.m. We'd wake up, open the windows and doors, freshen up, brush our teeth, and then be ready 9 a.m. To go again. It was just like meeting these ridiculous deadlines because we pushed it pretty hard, and I think that's one of the things that Roger liked about myself and Trent. Yeah.
But at that time, that's a dream job, right? You're 18 years old.
Yeah.
Much the same as myself too. You fall into club world. It's like you're no longer working an hour job. You're working. It's a lifestyle, right?
Yeah. And I guess the thing you notice when you're young is very quickly the perks are fun. You know, like getting into the right nightclubs, the right circles. You know, popular with people, and just being able to get drinks and stuff like that. But for me, that faded pretty quickly because I started seeing the business side. And I mean, I did pretty shit in high school. I got the worst TER. I broke my father's heart because my passion wasn't in it. And as any Asian knows, if you do not do well in school, you've brought shame upon the family or something, But then I found my passion. I said, I'm going back to school. I'm studying marketing and management. Went to TAFE, studied that, got a really good score, and then I was admitted into Monash to do a double degree management and marketing. Skipped the first year. And then once I finished that, I just took all that knowledge and said, right, how can I apply marketing management degree into nightclubbing? And I left Roger soon after that. And I just said to him, look, out of respect for you, I'm never going to step onto your territory, which is all the mainstream R&B nights and stuff. So I then stuck with running Asian nights. So I went out into the burbs in 1999 with DJ Fluke, my very good mate Damo, and Trent and a couple of other business partners, and we ran our first Dandenong Town Hall underage.
Proper old school.
Yeah, old school. Did well, expanded. Then we realised the demand is there for an Asian underage. We did not know what we did not know at the time, and so then we started doing Asian underages in the city. We went to Pod, which is I think now called Tattoos or something like that.
Tattoo, nah, it's sorry, it's changed its name. It's Bottom End now.
That's it. Sorry, yeah,
Yep.
you're right. Yeah, did it there, and then we someone picked us up and headhunted us. It was Karen from Salt Nightclub, and said, "Why don't you do your Asian nights here?" Yeah, cool. We did it. Did 2 shows. She loved it, and she said, "I want to buy into it." And I said, "Look, we can't." Because as soon as someone says, I want to buy into something, you realize the value of it, even if you don't yourself realize the value. So I said, look, sorry, it's not for sale. So then she said, well, why don't you come work for me at my Friday night? And at the time, this was the hottest Asian night in town, maybe the only Asian night in town. And it was wrapping around, it was in Daly Street, I think in South Yarra, and would literally wrap around the whole street, and you'd need security guards just to manage the crowd getting in. Worked there for a while. Had some very interesting experiences. It was the first time I ever worked in an Asian nightclub. I grew up with a lot of friends that are non-Asian, so it was quite an experience for me. But that's where we developed the Asian night following.
So I was going to say that. So like you look at the history of, you talk about 90s, 2000s and stuff, and there's potential. I don't know if there was Asian nights in the 80s. I'm guessing no. Do you know the history of sort of the Asian night? So where they began, because now like they're desired, right? People will sell their souls for an Asian night in the nightclub because they're the biggest bar spends by far. No one gets close to them.
Yeah.
But back in the 90s and the 90s, it wasn't like that, right?
Yeah.
So can you run me through a little bit of the history of like the Asian nights in Melbourne?
Yeah, sure. As much as I would love to take the honour of saying that we started the Asian nights, that's not the truth. But a lot of people think that. It actually started with some university kids back, I think might have been the late 90s, because they couldn't get into nightclubs. They would always get knocked back, especially if a group of Asian guys would go to a nightclub, they get knocked back. So they hired out Metro, and they would do like an end of semester break event on a Tuesday night. And that did quite well. One of them that attended that is Karen C, Singaporean international student. And she said, you know what, I can do this. So then she set up, I think it was was it Chevron? I can't remember which venue it was, but it was around the Chevron. She started Frisky, which was a Friday Asian night, and it took off. It did really well. So I would credit those university students who did a few parties, then Karen, for setting the scene and laying the foundation. And through that, she ran it for maybe a year or two. I can't remember. She goes, you know what? I might as well just take the bar. And, coming from wealthy families, her dad then probably helped her finance to buy Warehouse off Martha. And that's when Salt was born. And when Salt was born, that just changed everything.
So Salt was born as an actual Asian nightclub originally, because I know on the Saturday night there was, you know, there's a lot of people throw back the history of techno and house and all that sort of stuff, but it was actually originally bought to be an Asian night.
It was bought to be an Asian night by Karen, but she was a very smart businesswoman and she was very forward thinking. Even at that time when she was probably graduating from university, she was so smart. She had Future Entertainment. I could be wrong here. They didn't have a weekly. And she said, why don't you do your weekly? Because you have all the great music festivals. So the first weekly, my understanding, was at Salt Nightclub, but you can check that later on. But yeah, so she had Salt Nightclub. Saturdays was Future, their weekly. Fridays was called Move, which was her flagship Asian night. Then she did this homage to Singapore called Mumbo Jumbo on Wednesday nights. And it was hilarious. They would play everything from Rick Astley to, you know, some pop music, then back to retro, one or two R&B tracks, hence the name Mumbo Jumbo, just a mixture of things. But that was Salt Nightclub, but it also had its sort of dark days. There was a homicide, the first one that happened inside the club, in the actual, on the dance floor actually. And tragically enough, it was the same time that they had that song Murder on the Dance Floor out. It's around the same time, yeah, bad timing. And also the triple homicide as well. That famous, infamous night there, yeah.
So yeah, going on to that, right? Something I wanted to touch on and ask you, so I'm kind of happy you brought that up. But basically, like all refugees, they sort of come in, the story is much the same, right? Like you look now, Asian nights are, as I said, the most desired nights you can get into a club. But in the 90s, early 2000s, that wasn't the case. And it's the same story, same as the Africans now. People getting knocked back, they create their own nights and hubs, then they become desired, right? We're seeing the same thing happen literally with African nights as we speak. But when you're talking the Asian nights, again, back in those days, people were scared of them. Like club owners didn't want to bring them in because people were getting quite literally killed. When that sort of happened, like why do you think that became a thing? I'm guessing there was maybe some Asian street gang stuff going out externally, but like there was a lot of stuff from Bubble to Salt that was sort of happening. And like, how did you guys deal with that as Asian night promoters? How did you sort of, I guess, get away from that stigma?
Yeah. So I set the scene. I think it was around the late 80s to mid 90s was peak Asian violence. This was like, choppings and stabbings and whatnot, machete attacks in the city and in the suburbs and all that. That was peak Asian violence. That probably put a lot of concerns in people's mind, even if you weren't in the nightclub industry. So naturally, as soon as somebody knocks on the door and says, I want to do an Asian night, they say no. The irony was in the early days, there was not much violence because not many people knew about these Asian clubs unless you went to the university groups. Then you got invited, but otherwise, people didn't know. What happened was, as soon as people started running Asian nights, there was no process, there was no filter. They did not know how to be a promoter with longevity. They just invited a whole bunch of friends, didn't understand dynamics of who's who in the zoo. And we knew, and we had a really good understanding. Growing up, my business partners and I, Damien, Kenneth, and Suhan, we grew up in neighbourhoods, mainly in the southeast. I think Damien was in the eastern suburbs. There was always Asian gangs. I mean, without mentioning the specifics, there was rivalry between gangs. This suburb didn't like that suburb, and if they ever kind of met and clashed at a city party, it'd be on for young and old. So we did experience quite a bit of that, and we did not know how to handle it in the early days because we tried to sort of have conversations and be, Switzerland in between and look, we don't want to side with you or you, but this can't go on because, someone's going to die one day. And, it did happen, unfortunately, but it woke us up and it made us realize that for us to make this work and for us to continue this as our, way of making an income, we have to put structures in. And at the time, my business partner and I, this was at Eve, when the Russians ran it, Nick and Daniel, we put in Scantech. And my business partner, Trent, said, look, I'm nervous about this because if you put it in, the numbers are going to drop. And we're going to lose business. And I said, look, if we continue like this, something bad's going to happen. So he trusted me and we made the decision and we said, look, let's put Scantech in. And straight away, guys were just nervous and wouldn't come because the guys bought the drinks for the girls then didn't come. And we dropped heavily overnight from 900, 1,000 to maybe 400-ish. You could walk through the place and it was quiet. But lo and behold, week by week, the girls that did come had a good time. They felt safe. So they came. Then the guys that did get in go, hey, there's heaps of girls in here. It's safe, there's room. 400 became 500, became 600, became 700. Before you know it, it was 900, 1,000 again of the good kids, because nobody wanted to get scanned. And once they did have a punch on, we would ban them, and they'd come back the next day and realize they've been banned, so they know that this system is legit. So word got out, and the funniest thing is, when we were at Lumbra, we had Scan Tech as well, and I remember having nights where this was, at this time, I was with Trent and some other business partners as well. We laughed because people would say, I'm going to drop you, I'm going to hit you, but not here. I'll get you outside because I don't want to get banned. And it was a bit comical in that sense, yeah. It's
funny because I remember when Scan Tech happened, I think that was the same concern everybody had. People were like, okay, some of these undesirables are desirable to us.
Yeah.
And we were like, they're going to not go. So I remember that being like a industry-wide sort of challenge. And what's funny about it is that you're right. Like I remember police coming to us and we caught this dealer and we had him out the front. And the guy was like getting dragged away by the police and he was saying, am I going to get banned? And the cop came back and was like, he cares more about being banned on Scan Tech than he does the fact that he just got caught with drugs.
I know. It's so funny. Same thing, like you know, being a promoter, most of the time the people that make trouble, you kind of know.
Yes.
Because they feel like, because I know the owner, I can act up. Now you have to talk to your mate going, mate, I got to ban you. So we softened it. We just called them holidays. We said, you need to take a 4-week holiday or a 6-week holiday or a 3-month holiday. You can't come back. So that's how we sort of improve it. And I'm quite proud to say that these days, like even at Miss Collins, when we run Scarlet, we just celebrate our 11th year and no trouble. You can walk through there and if you bump into someone, chances are that person will probably apologise to you before you can apologise to them. It's really safe. Great vibe, yeah.
It's a crazy thing to talk about, right? Because obviously, as we talked about, there was Asians and then there was the Middle Easterns and then there's Africans. So there's always been some form of like group that in the nightclub world that's come with challenges, right? And then they evolve. So you talk about like with the Asian nights, again, back in the 90s and 2000s, there was a lot of clubs like, no, I'm not going to take them. Now they're the most desired, and they're safe. You don't hear about any of this sort of stuff, all those things that used to happen in the past. Do you think Scan Tech was the actual #1 lever for that to change? Or do you reckon that it just sort of naturally happened? And like, why did it change so dramatically from being this sort of scary place to go out and, you know, people being worried about it, making the papers all the time, to now being some of the most successful nights in Melbourne?
Yeah. I think Scan Tech was a catalyst. But what helped it was when myself, Kenneth, Damien, we actually were competitors in the early days. Think, you know, Nike, Reebok and Adidas just at each other's throats. Fierce competitors, but when we joined forces, all of us came from university backgrounds and held degrees. So we looked at the business model through different lens. So we said, okay, if we're going to call this our industry, our career, how are we going to implement all that we've learned at uni into this to make it sustainable? So I think the second reason is you had business-minded people, that entrepreneurs that, listen, let's think long-term. Let's not think short-term money, think long-term. And I think the third thing, I'd like to give credit to the Asian community. They evolved. They realized that, hey, listen, this is not the way. You know, if you messed up in an Asian household, you're probably more scared of your dad than the police, because your dad would give you the belting of your life, while the police would just go, hey, son, don't do that again, you know. I think that helped to sort of usher in a new generation of clubbers where by day they're accountants, you know, they're engineers, they work as tradies in factories, and at night they just want to spend their money, their hard-earned money, and have a good time, not interested in posturing and, you know, joining gangs and all that. But the booths help a lot. You are right. In terms of, you know, attractiveness, I believe that the Asian nights in the early days, nobody wanted to touch us. But then at one stage, my business partner, Kenneth, he was getting probably one phone call a week from different nightclubs, owners saying, hey, can you come do your Tang night here? At the height of Tang, this is pre-COVID, we were running 5 weekly nights. 2 Saturdays, 3 Fridays, a crew of us, yeah. We had an office, it was a well-oiled machine. On any given weekend, we had close to 5,000 people come through our doors. And on a long weekend, like Good Friday and Easter Monday, we'd be doing 7, 8 events. Come Sunday night, we're exhausted. We've ran like 7 events back to back to back to back. But that's what they see now, and then they love it, because as soon as you do an Asian night, bang, the revenue goes up. And there's been a couple of nightclubs, I think, we've jumped in and we've saved I won't name names, but they were pretty much on their last legs. They could make it work with the Western night, but they just need some capital to reinvest for their white night. We came in at the 11th hour, brought in a lot of money, revenue, but the good thing was whatever they did with us on a Friday did not interfere with their Saturday market. Whereas if they went with the old business model, well, whatever you take in on a Friday, how do you say Friday's not for you, Saturday's not for you, stay with Friday, but I'll find another crew. So they use nationality to differentiate it.
And one of the things is we keep talking about how the revenue that comes in, right? But the thing that people don't understand is that, like, when I was doing my nights, they were obviously more techno music based, and it was like a wider crowd that were drinking beers and UDLs or whatever. So we were doing 30,000 with 1,000 in the room.
Yeah.
The Asian nights, I know, and you know, some of these 1,000 people rooms are doing 90, 100, 120. So it's not like 1x, it's like 3 or 4x.
Yeah.
Why the fuck do they make so much more money?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Asians just love to drink. We have a drinking culture. You know, if you're Vietnamese, there's a word called nhau, which is it's just drinking. It's drinking culture. There's a similar word if you're Chinese, or because back in our country we sort of don't really have nightclubs like the you know, maybe the upper class do, but for the rest of the working class, you don't really go to nightclubs. It's a drinking culture. But coming to Australia, it's our way of connecting. So we'll go out, we'll have a drink together. But because in Asian culture there's a thing called face, if you shout around, I have to shout around. I cannot pretend to walk off or I'm busy now, got a phone call, whatever. I have to shout. And if there's 5 guys in the group, 5 rounds are covered. It has to be done. And another kind of messed up thing with Asian culture is they want to get you drunk. Even if they pay for it, they want to get you to the point where you're vomiting so they can laugh at you, but I'll finance it, you know? And then on top of that, you've got the ultra rich. And they just love to flaunt it because they love their booze. So when we were running the Chinese night as part of the portfolio of 5 nights, this was insane, Danny. We had people 21 years old calling us up saying, can you put the witch's hat outside of Bond? I'm bringing the McLaren down tonight. 21 years old driving a McLaren would come in and drop 5K, 10K, 15K. I think one guy dropped 20K once. And there was this one guy that was so ostentatious, he ordered a train of Ace of Spades. I think they're about a grand each that was selling at the time. He ordered 7 of them, and one of them he poured down into the bucket so him and his mates could wash their hands. That was the kind of money that was going around. This is pre-COVID, and the relationship between Australia and China was, you know, a lot better. And the wealthy students were coming over and living here, and they were just dropping crazy money, Danny. Insane.
I remember working a tramp at the same time you guys had Bond, and we would go around there to go check it out, and there would be fucking Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, and they were parking them up, heading into the club, and I was like, what is this world? It was like another, I couldn't even understand that in fact it was happening in the same city. Going back to that one thing in the nightclub stuff before we go into the nightclub owner part of your story, was you obviously talked about how you had this professional degree and you understood marketing, and that's how you were able to prosper in what you were doing. But also you had these street smarts of what was going on in the Asian culture, and you'd grown up as a refugee in an area that was predominantly like had these sort of groups in there. Do you have any sort of hairy stories or anything like that when you're working in those club spaces that you were like, you had to navigate that didn't really kind of lean into the professional arc that you know, would have normally have done if you'd worked in a normal event business?
Yeah. What comes to mind is Salt nightclub. Salt back in the days was the wild, wild west of Asian nightclub. This was when pretty much every ethnic group, the Asian ethnic groups, whether it be Vietnamese or whatnot, Cambodians or Chinese, or they would sort of meet at Salt nightclub because it was the only place to go. But because drug culture was quite big as well, you would have dealers in there, and they would be trying to sort of, I guess, you know, cover their turf. This is my turf, blah, blah, blah. And you have all these turf wars. That was pretty hairy because I'm trying to go in there to be a legit business person, worrying about DJ rosters, promoters on the doors. All this shit is happening right in front of your eyes. And you're at a sort of a crossroad where do you pretend that it's not happening, don't get involved, and then you feel like you've lost control of it? Or do you try to intervene and bring some order to it, but then now you're linked to it? And for us, we made the decision to say, look, we're not going to side with any particular group. I remember one night there was a guy that came in. This is when I was working at Next Blue. We were running a night called Stereo. It was the biggest Asian night, just after Salt had closed down. there was a fight that happened inside, really, really big. Now, this is before Scantech. And the guards kicked him out and everything, blah, blah, blah. And I tried to go out to see if I knew any of the group to squash everything. And then there was this guy that looked a little bit older than me. Maybe he's one of the the seniors of that group. Very calmly walked up to me and said, "I'm coming in tonight." And I looked at him. I didn't know who he was, but I could just sense that he's a somebody. I don't know if he's going to come in to sort out the rest of that business or whatnot. And I said to him, the most polite way that I could, "I'm sorry, there's been an incident. I can't let you in." And he paused and he looked at me and he goes, "All right." And he just walks away and I had shivers. I was like, did you look at me to remember my face exactly, to download that image to your head so that you could sort me out later or whatever? And I reckon for the next few weeks, I was just paranoid. Going to work, coming home from work, not that I got involved, but that look that he gave me, that you knew that he was a somebody high up. So I had to call somebody that I knew, a friend of a friend. And he went to his higher ups to find this guy to sort him out and say, "Listen, this is," at the time I was dating a girl and her uncle's quite connected. And yeah, he helped me out, sort out some problems. But this is not something that you want on your back, you know.
And you don't deal with if you become an accountant. Maybe another career path in a different lifetime.
Oh gosh.
But it's one of those things again, you know, like I think everyone
it's
who's
etched into my memory now. Yeah.
but everyone who's worked in nightclubs, be it R&B, you know, techno, trance, the thing is, the reality of it is drugs do come into it and you have to deal with this shit. So you're not alone. Like as we sit around and tell war stories, no doubt I'll tell you some afterwards, but it's like everyone sort of unfortunately had that situation and it's a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, and that's why I love to bring that stuff up.
But the funny thing is, the ones that mouth off, the ones that you don't get scared. You're like, yeah, whatever, mate. Oh, blah, bloody, blah, 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 blah. You're like, yeah, whatever. It's the one that's so cold, calm, and collected, looks at you dead in the eye. That's the one that scares me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You then become a nightclub owner. Obviously, you run all these nights. You're running 7 to 8 nights a week, and you guys decide to become a nightclub owner. You own Baroque, you have Bond, other venues and stuff like that. Then you move into the restaurant stuff. But on the nightclub stuff, what's the progression from running nightclubs, and why do you decide to start running clubs, which is a full different beast for those that don't know? Being a promoter is a lot easier. It doesn't come with you don't have to pay rent, you don't have to pay staff, you don't have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
You can move if things fail. What makes you go into nightclubs?
I think the biggest advantage of being a promoter, not a nightclub, is nightclubs have a very short shelf life. They peak for a few years and then that's it. So too does the crowd. Now, if you're a promoter, you can pack your bags up, relocate and set up at a new place in 6 to 8 weeks, from shutdown to open, very quickly. But once you buy into it, a nightclub, you're now stuck. You have to make this work. There is no, let me think of another way or how to get out. No, there isn't. There's no out. As they say, if you want to take the island, burn the boat. So what happened was we got approached at the same time. This was like peak TANG. We were running so many nights, and on one side we had Aussie. On the other side we had Haddam. Haddam owns a lot of the venues around town, and so does Aussie. And at the time, Haddam had Miss Collins. I actually used to work at Silk Road as a marketing manager under the old management, but Simon Digby, Haddam, and Tony Perner, they bought into Miss Collins along with some other business partners like Richie as well. And what happened was they both said, "Hey, can you come work with me and be my business partner? I want to give you the venue." And we're like, Kenneth and I are like, oh, what the hell do we do? Like, we don't want to sort of upset either party, but at the same time, they're both such great opportunities. And we said, right, why don't we do both? We partnered up with Aussie on the Friday, and we did a brand called OMG. And on Saturday, we partnered up with Haddam and Simon. So we're venue owners, but we run the money-making night Saturday for them, and we're venue owners at Bond as well, but we make the money on Friday for them, if that makes sense. So we wear both hats, the owner as well as the promoter. So that's how we were able to satisfy both sides, and that's when we became venue owners.
Looking back at it, pre-being a promoter and then becoming a venue owner, is it something that you're like happy you did, or something you regret? I know the answer already.
Look, it has its perks and it's fun, but I probably would have done things differently. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy working with the business partners that I do. It's just that as a promoter, your greatest strength is bringing and herding a crowd to a certain venue. And then if that, for instance, that no longer works after 5 years or 6 years, you have the ability to pick that up and go somewhere else. We lost that ability. We had to make certain things work. We're just blessed that at Miss Collins, when we run Scarlet, we were very successful. I mean, we just did our 11th year 2 Saturdays ago. So proud to say that the brand showed no slowing down. Like Bobby Love came down and partied up with us, and he was quite impressed. He goes, I can't believe this is the 11th year, 1,500-ish people, 6-figure bar, no slowing down.
Yeah, I asked that question because I look back at my time when I decided to become a club owner, and I'm not going to say it's my biggest regret. I loved it. I learned. I grew.
Yeah.
But it's like, why the fuck did I do that? Yeah, like I made way less money than when I was a promoter.
Yeah.
You ran all these nightclubs. You own all these nightclubs. Is there like a couple of stories you've got that come to mind when you think of like crazy sort of situations, or if not crazy events that were just beyond you that'll stay stained in your memory forever?
A recent one that happened is Lisa from Blackpink. When they did their concert, she chose to come party at our place at Scarlet upstairs. She was there secretly. A couple of the promoters knew about it, but it was by and large pretty quiet because she just wanted the privacy. Working as the marketing manager for Silk Road before it became Miss Collins, I had the pleasure of sort of organising and help hosting some of the big stars coming through. Beyonce hosted Jay-Z's after party tour upstairs in the private suites. I was there when they did the Usher wrap-up party, and we were given strict instructions. Do not talk, do not make eye contact with Usher. And as I walked past, I just quickly assessed the height. I'm like, oh, this guy's not as tall as I thought he was.
It's always the case, hey?
Yeah. But there's a lot of moments where you get to see artists that you love listening to, and it's quite surreal that I remember, and I'm jumping ahead here for the music festival moment, but I remember not the Ultra that just went by, but the one before that. So we were in Gold Coast, QT, and this was the morning of the Friday when we're supposed to have all the DJs play. We had Steve Aoki, we had Armin van Buuren, we had some other big names as well. What was surreal was we go to breakfast, and I'm sitting here having breakfast with my business partners and all that, and there's, Armin van Buuren getting some poached eggs. You've got Steve Aoki walking around with a plate of fruits, and it's just mind-boggling, like being in that space and sort of being able to be a part of that moment. That's a bit of a, pinch yourself moment.
It's special, hey? And that's why we do
Yeah.
it. Like, that's why we're not accountants or traditional marketing guys for the MCG.
Yeah.
You just talked about Ultra, and that was my next question. So you guys work into Ultra, you start working into the festival space. It's fucking humongous. You work with one of the biggest brands in the world. How do you get into that? And what's the journey been like so far working with that international brand?
Yeah. So that, if I trace it to its origin, big shout out to my mate, Tam. Shout out to you, mate. He introduced me to Ash Ibrahim. And he said, you've got to meet my mate. You two do, events and stuff like that. You're two of my good mates. You should meet. We met up, hit it off really well. And then from there, he goes, why don't you do some events with us? You bring the Asians and we'll take care of the rest. And I think we did a couple of shows at the Sheds, about 2,000-3,000 people. That worked out well. And then next was they go, hey, we've got the opportunity to do the Last God's Kitchen show. I think it was at Margaret Court, 4,500-5,000 people. We said, yeah, cool, let's do it. So we did God's Kitchen, sold it out, and that's when we knew we were onto something, because we were able to bring a segment of the market that they couldn't, but they needed that market that wouldn't cannibalize theirs. So then the opportunity came through Ash and my business partner, Kenneth at the time, with Travis, went to Amsterdam, and they had this initial meeting there. And that kickstarted everything off, the negotiations. We went to ADE, and then they had a second meeting. I believe Ash and Kenneth went over to Singapore because they used to do Ultras there. That's when they signed the deal, put the pen to paper, and the rest is history. We did the first event together. I think it was at Sydney My Music Bowl. You have to do the Road to Ultra. It's kind of like your L plates. single stage. And then after that, it became the multi-stage. And our other business partner, the Lucky Group, who we love working with, enjoy working with Luke, Spags, and Kieran as well. I'm very close to Kieran, good mate of mine. And that's how, we sort of run Ultra. Tang takes care of the Asians. Lucky takes care of the Aussies. And Ash and Travis takes care of the Middle East market, the WOGs, and everyone else in between,
It's perfect synergy, right?
Yeah.
On that, you just mentioned Kieran. I have to say this. I was chatting to him as I was doing my investigation, and he mentioned that when you guys first met, that you were struggling to understand him because some of his the way he talks. So if anyone doesn't know Kieran, good friend of both of ours, but he's a boy from the burbs, grew up in a similar area to me.
Yeah.
And he was telling me that he had used the term, "We're not here to fuck spiders," and you had no idea what it meant.
Yeah. I like to think I'm pretty Aussie-fied, right? I've been here since I was 4 years old. I'm 48 now. So I've been in Australia, Melbourne, for 44 years. I thought I knew most, maybe even all of the Aussie. And when Ultra started, the first 2-3 years, Kieran and I were driving the marketing. We were managing this massive $600,000 marketing budget, and we were working together, and we became pretty close. And one day, something happened, and he goes, "I'm not here to fuck spiders." And I looked at him and go, "What the fuck did you just say?"
So good.
Yeah. And then he explained it. Then he just said, "Oh, do you know about this saying? Do you know about that saying?" So, yeah.
Running festivals, it's a fucking nightmare, right? And I know you guys have had your peaks and troughs. Some of the challenges you faced with Ultra, can you share them with us?
Yeah. The one that sort of comes to mind, and we all panicked, was one year in Sydney at Parramatta. This was when Tiger Lily was playing. The generator went. This is like doors that open. You already got maybe a few hundred people up at the front. She's trying to play, and the sound goes off. And we're all panicking. Nobody knows what's going on, and we're like shitting ourselves. Like, how do you get the music back on? How do you get the sound back on? But the problem is, they weren't qualified to solve the problem. They could just look at the problem. You know what I mean? Lucky the generator kicked back in, and we're okay. But man, that was a hairy moment.
What about the rain at the Sydney Mine Music Bowl? Like, you guys got one of the worst weathers I reckon that anybody's got in the history that I've seen. Like, it was fucking up there. How was that? Like, coming into the week, like looking at the weather report, and then dealing with it. I know it's sold out, which obviously helps. Yeah. But at the same time, like, how was dealing with that?
Terrible. I personally like Sydney Mine Music Bowl as a venue, but I know that because some people who like to dance, they don't like that slope angle. Now add water. It's a mudslide. It was terrible. Like, we had so many complaints from, punters saying, "Hey, don't do it here again. Please, can you take it to Flemington?" Because at least if Flemington rains, it's flat, So, but it was challenging. But the good thing about anyone that's ran a show at Sydney Mine Music, they got a lot of infrastructure already built in, whether it be the stage, the green rooms, et cetera, et cetera. So from that point of view, it was good. But from the punter's point of view, horrible, terrible.
Yeah, and it's just such an unpredictable. Like, I actually think that when you look at places around the world, you can do festivals. Melbourne is one of the biggest festival cities in Australia, or probably is the biggest festival city, but it's the fucking worst for it. Yeah, and so it's like we're always battling against the weather and stuff.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say is, like, obviously back in when you first started, what was the sort of Asian night music? Sorry, what was the Asian night music they were listening to? Because now, when you think of the big Asian festivals and the big Asian nights, a lot of it's trance, a lot of it's like hard style. Was that the case back then?
Yeah, Asians are very funny in their taste of music. Very, very odd. Super cheesy, super poppy on one end, or super hard, like 160 BPM or whatever, like hard styles. Or one of the guys in the office, Sonny, was telling me something about there's something even harder than hard styles. I call it pots and pans. That's what it sounds like to me. Pots and pans going off. But there's a group of Asians, and shout out to Jensen and T and also Tam, that understood quality music. And in between, there was this house scene that was coming about. And I was listening to your other podcast with your assistant saying, "Is it a bang or not?" And I was listening to it, like, yeah, I used to love listening to that. Like in Melbourne around 2002, 2008, amazing music. We tried to push that. And I remember, because I was DJing as well, I remember trying to introduce house to the Asians. This is when they either like NRG. This is, I think, Hard Candy.
The Orange album.
Billboards, yeah, NRG, Scott Alert, or they like R&B music, right? nothing in between. And I introduced house, and I remember playing house one night, and some dude came up to me and goes, "Hey man, why are you playing slow trance or slow techno?" And I'm like, "Dude, it's house," and they just didn't get it. To this day, we're trying to sort of, introduce it, and some will get it, but most go, "Nah, I'm either hard style or I'm R&B, girl friendly."
It's been the same for 20 years.
Yeah,
Tang-
hasn't changed.
TANG, I believe, stands for the Australasian Night Group. Is that correct?
Yes. So what happened was when we joined forces, Kenneth goes to me, "We need a new name. We need something that unifies all of us." We wanted something that the streets could say very quickly, but we also wanted something that if we had to go corporate, that it represented a more professional look without sort of being too Asian. So the original abbreviation was the Asian Night Group. And that's TANG. But then TANG sounds like, it's an Asian name anyway. And as we sort of progress and Kenneth realised we're dealing with more and more non-Asians, he goes, "Let's just tweak it a little bit, mate." So we slapped on Australasian.
When I found out that TANG stand for that, like I've obviously known of TANG for as long as I've been working in this industry, and then someone was like, "It stands for the Asian Night Group." I was like, "What the fuck?" I thought it was just a standalone word.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But Kenneth has been a pivotal part of our journey. He's the CEO of the company. He's quite shy. I actually asked him, "Can you come down?" And he's like, "It's not for me, mate. I like to work in the shadows, So yeah, but he's been a pivotal part in sort of navigating us through this, and now we're going through an evolution in our company where we're doing V-pop, Vietnamese pop, huge thing, blowing up. Obviously K-pop, it's a big thing now. And yeah, he's had moments where, he's been called multiple times on phones. "Hey Kenneth, can you come do a night, blah, blah, blah." He's even sat down with James Packer. He got invited to dinner in the suites of Crown Suites, rubbing shoulders with him. So he kind of comes in at the start of the project, has a vision, says, "Right, this is where we're going to be in 2 years' time, 5 years' time," sets the course. Then you've got Suhan, who's the financial controller, the CFO of the company. All numbers have to make sense in the company. For any company to be profitable and stay afloat, you have to have a numbers guy. I'm the marketing guy, and Damien's the music director. So shout out to him because he's been doing really well on Spotify. He's a very, very amazing, accomplished artist himself. 1.7 million monthly listeners on Spotify, so not too shabby. But that's sort of the evolution of TANG, how we got together and how we formed the name TANG.
Yeah, crazy. So when you came in here, at first we spoke. So for everyone who works in our industry, they know that we call nights by, Asian night, Wog night, White night. Like that's how we talk, right?
Yeah.
I said to you, "Am I going to get cancelled for this?" Do you think that that's a thing? And do you think it'll ever change? Like, do you think that our industry will stop saying that? Because for as long as I've worked in this industry, and you have, the promoters call themselves Wog promoters, and we call ourselves White promoters. But it's like, do you think that will change?
Within our community, as in nightclubbers, right, promoters, we don't take any offence to it. It's like calling a dog, a cat, a cat. It is what it is. That's what it is. The quickest way to describe it. And I remember before the camera started rolling, he said, "Am I going to get cancelled saying this?" And I said, "You're more likely to get cancelled by your people than my people." I said, "The Asians have no issues. It is an Asian night. It is what it is. There's no malice or there's no venom behind that term. It's the Asian night. Some people like to integrate with the rest of the community and go to a night, and they'll go with their Asian friends. But some would prefer to go to a nightclub where they can meet their own kind, and if they are looking for a partner or fling or whatever, they want someone of their own culture."
And it's kind of weird, right? 'Cause again, in our world, we hang out with all different types of people all the time. We work with one another. Like we have to because that's the business. But I always think to myself, we still sort of have those those nights. They're separate and the way they kind of move and whatnot. We're all one, realistically. Australia, in Melbourne especially, is so fucking multicultural. But it's like, I wonder if it ever stops. Because there's always been forever and a day these sort of race kind of segregational nights. It's like, does it ever stop? Like, do you think the Asian nights will ever wear off and they'll just become nights?
I think if you fast forward a decade or two, it probably will fade. I think it will. Because as this Asian community integrates more and more with the rest of the community, there probably feels there's less of a need. like my wife's from Queensland. She's Japanese, but from Queensland. She said the Asians just get along with the rest of the community. There's not really an Asian night scene up there. And I said, how bizarre. I go, so when you were growing up, all your friends were mixed? And she said, yeah, it's mixed. Like, but for some weird reason in Sydney and in Melbourne, the Asians like to stick with their enclave.
Yeah.
But I think that it will fade over time.
You talk about before how you had, when you were running Bond, you had like one of the most expensive booths there was. It was a part of the promotion when you launched. There was people there dropping $10,000, $20,000. When people think Asian, they think Crazy Rich Asian is literally one of the most fucking successful movies there is.
Yeah.
Is there a moment that you can remember of all the times you've done all the Asian nights where it was just an absolute stonker of a story that blew your mind of someone showing wealth?
There was one incident where Kenneth played it really well. So he knew that there were these two massive big spenders coming in that night. And he's a very strategic thinker. And he goes to our bookings manager, give them the best two tables, but sit them right next to each other. And all of a sudden it turned into a pissing competition. If he brings out 5 DOMs, he's going to bring out 10 DOMs. Brings out 10 DOMs, bring out 10 DOMs plus 5 Cristal or whatever, blah, blah. And it just kept going. It was a pissing competition. And we just sat back, just like crossed arm going, cool, keep going, keep going, keep going.
What did the bill look like at the end?
I can't remember, but I just remember, I don't remember the exact figure. I just remember when Kenneth told me, my eyes watered. And the fact that these guys were just 20-something years old or something like that, it was, Danny, it was insane money because these were like sons and daughters of politicians and military and government and everything. They just had crazy money.
With that, right, you've got all these people coming in that are sons of politicians and, you know, royalty and all that sort of stuff. You would have met some really interesting cats and people. Is there someone that you've met, like external to, in your clubs where you think to yourself, I can't believe I fucking met that person?
Yeah. So when we were at Platform 1 and we were really pushing the house scene now, this is like really taken off around 2004 or 6, we had the side room and I loved house music, loved electro, played it. And I was playing with a guy named Azrin. And loveliest guy, really chilled, really cool. We played with him and he was awesome. And I spoke to him like any other DJ, any other employee. You know, if I had to cut shifts, cut shifts. If something went wrong, I'd tell him. I didn't realise that he was part of the royal family. But he never told me that until when he left and went back to Malaysia. He goes, come visit me sometime. So Tret and I did. We're talking bodyguards in nightclubs, like ex-military. And, you know, we're just having the craziest time in his car. He's got one of those, you know, those, what are they called again? Those people movies, the Toyota, forgot the...
Yaris or whatever?
No, the big ones where very luxed up inside, you know, expensive people movies. And we were just having a party in his car. And I said, hey, should we be partying in this car? And he goes, don't worry about it. My number plate, because they have a special number plate that starts with a letter, and that's government. So if you pull them over, you as a police officer, you better have a very good reason, otherwise you might not have a job. And I said, okay, cool, carry on.
So going into that, like that lane of all extraordinary things that happen outside, as promoters, we get to experience extraordinary things. Is there a non-nightclub, non-festival moment that you can think of, kind of like that Malaysian story you just shared with us, where you're like, how the fuck did I get into this situation? And I'm so blessed to be here.
Yes. Right now, I've got the restaurant Yum Sing House, and I've always loved food. And as I've gotten older, I realised my passion for F&B has only grown, hasn't faded. Love wines, love food. Could talk to you about produce till the cows come home.
Literally.
Yeah.
Then you'll kill them and eat them.
Yeah. And then I just remember one night just sort of sitting there watching going, I must be one of the luckiest guys to always be able to do what I love doing. Whether I spent the first 20, 25 years running nightclubs and entertaining people and putting smiles on people's faces, I'd have people come up to me and say, I met my wife through your nightclubs. We've now married and got kids or something like that, you know. Conversely, I've also had stories where, I ended up being divorced because I came to your nightclub, you know. You have those stories as well. But I remember this was the moment that almost brought tears to my eyes, and I spoke to my team. So what happened was at the restaurant, we had 2 good friends of mine that came down. I won't mention the name, but one of them, the sister, husband had cancer. So the sister has been looking after the husband and probably lost herself in the moment. And they said, can we come down? We want to have dinner. And then afterwards, could we book a small room, sing karaoke? I said, yeah, no problem. They went in there and they sung, and I checked in on them. I just popped my head in and said, hey, how's everything going? And she grabbed my hand, took me out of the room, held both my hands and said, I will never be able to thank you enough. Because for the last 2.5 hours, my sister has been herself. I saw her smile and she forgot all of her worries and troubles, what she's going through with her husband having cancer. And that's when I was reminded the power of hospitality, the industry that we're in. A lot of people say that, you know, we're non-essential and stuff like that during the pandemic. But there's so many people that need to have a sense of connection. They need to go out, release. If you don't, they're going to go crazy. And if mental health is as important as what people say, I think that to a degree, people in hospitality or sporting or events, tourism, we provide an essential service to give people some fun and joy in their life so they don't go crazy.
And you talk about when we connect together as promoters, right? And we bring all these things together. But what humans in general, doesn't matter where you come from, all over the world, is that we love to eat, we love to dance, we love to drink. Most cultures, right?
Yeah.
So you're right, 100%. It's not only is it this special power that can help people with mental health, it is the binding part of what makes humans, regardless of where you come from, human a lot of the time. And I know for myself, in back rooms or side rooms or events or restaurants, some of the most interesting people from all over the world, that's where I've combined with them over a meal or a drink. And that's how I found them and become friends with them. So it's a really fucking cool point. Yum Sing House, the restauranteur stuff, you go into that. Where is that at? And obviously it was a natural progression as you grew older and something you were interested in.
Yeah.
You love it. Are you looking to do more of it? Like what do you got? What are you sort of thinking there?
Yeah. So coming to about year 25 of nightclubs, my business partners could see that I was getting a little bit bored and a little bit over it. I was just there. I was just existing. So they said, listen, there's an opportunity that's popped up. Ozzy wants to, as in the business partner at Bond, Ozzy wants to do karaoke. And I said, cool. He wants to do a restaurant downstairs, karaoke upstairs. I said, let's go ahead and let's do it. Then we set it up. It's now in its, this month is its 4th year. So when we got into that, we weren't sure how to navigate through this, because how do you transition from nightclub to a restaurant? And in the first year or two, I admit I made a mistake. It was too much of a party vibe. You know, you had people just ordering shots of tequila for each other, and it kind of killed the diners. But we've managed to tweak that back a little bit, kept it fun but civilized downstairs, and then we just said all the craziness, it happens upstairs in the karaoke bar. Yeah. But the inspiration for it was actually because one night Ozzy went out and wanted to sing karaoke because his wife wanted to sing karaoke, called us up and said, where do you recommend? We gave him some places, and he came and he said, yeah, they all said that it's booked out. I don't know if it's true or not. And he goes, let's buy one.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's got the money. Why not? So he said, stuff it, let's buy one. And and then the rest is history.
So you're doing the hospitality, you've done the festival thing, you've done the nightclub thing, and you continue to kill it. What's next for TANG Group and yourself as a whole?
Yeah. So we're launching a new music festival called Lunation, and it's primarily spotlighting Asian artists. We feel that a lot of music festivals don't give the main stage platform enough for Asian artists. I mean, other than, say, Steve Aoki and Peggy Gou, no other Asian artist really gets that sort of airtime on the main stage. So that's what we're looking to launch. So that happens this month, 28th of June, down at Timberyard, and we're really excited to showcase Wukong and also Wisnu from Indonesia alongside Bass Jackers. So they're ranked 44 on the DJ Mag Top 100, so it's nice to have them. Yeah, and we just want to give a platform where Asian artists feel that they're going to be supported, but also gives us an opportunity. So if you're a photographer, videographer, or anything, and you want to sort of get ahead in the game, but you're finding that there's what we call a bamboo ceiling, then let us help you. So that's the whole idea of the project for Lunation.
I fucking love that. I actually saw Bass Jackers randomly on a cruise in Singapore for It's a Shit, but that's another story for another time. Yeah. Kiet, thank you so much for coming down today, man. This has been fucking awesome to share your story from a refugee from Vietnam who could have died in the middle of the ocean, but lucky you didn't, because you came on to help sort of curate and create a scene. You've gone on to become a pathfinder in that, create an opportunity for other guys, because obviously you have competition now, unfortunately, for everybody that's involved in your company. You've gone through this journey that has shown people that you can live a life that isn't your traditional way of you're supposed to, or the way you grew up. I want to thank you, man, for being such an integral part of Melbourne. And without people like you, we don't have the next generation of creators that have come through, and they're going to do more, hopefully, amazing stuff than us. And thank you for sharing all your insane, crazy stories. This has been fucking awesome. I've absolutely loved it. So thanks, dude, for coming down.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for also providing a platform to share these stories. So I've actually enjoyed a lot of the podcasts and previous guests that you've had on. And yeah, it's really good. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it. You're a legend.
Cheers.